The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Summary of chapters 1 through 7 by Lisa M. Kendrick. Chapter 1. The novel opens in Basil Hallward's home. Basil is an artist, and his friend, Lord Henry Wotton, claims this painting is Basil's masterpiece. Basil, however, does not want to show this painting in an exhibit because he feels like he has put too much of himself into it, and it is too intimate of a painting of the subject, Dorian Gray. Basil has come to see Dorian as his muse. He is obsessed with his looks and demeanor and is afraid others would see this in the painting. Lord Henry realizes that he has heard about Dorian Gray from his aunt, Lady Agatha, because Dorian has promised to help her with her charity work. Speaking of Dorian, the butler announces his arrival. Chapter 2. Dorian is introduced to Lord Henry with the warning by Basil that Henry is a bad influence. Henry and Dorian chat as Basil finishes the portrait. Henry introduces Dorian to his philosophy. The highest of all duties is the duty that one owes to oneself. Henry suggests that as Dorian is so young and attractive, he should live every moment to the fullest, as these attributes will fade. When Basil finishes the portrait, all of the men remark about how astoundingly gorgeous the painting is. However, Dorian becomes deeply depressed that the portrait will remain beautiful while he will grow old and ugly. He goes on to make a fervent wish that he remain untouched by time, while the painting ages instead. Dorian will not accept comfort, so Basil declares that if the painting is upsetting, he will destroy it then and there. Dorian stops him, and Basil gives him the painting as a gift. Chapter 3. Lord Henry visits his uncle, Lord Fermor, who tells him the story of Dorian's childhood. Dorian's mother was a noblewoman who eloped with a soldier. Her father, Dorian's grandfather, had Dorian's father killed. After giving birth to Dorian, his mother died of grief, leaving Dorian to be raised by his villainous and cruel grandfather. Henry is delighted and believes this makes Dorian fascinatingly romantic. Later, at a dinner party at his aunt, Lady Agatha's house, Henry rants about the ideas of hedonism and the selfishness and makes fun of people like his aunt who do charitable work. Henry insists, despite the dismay around him, that one's life should be spent appreciating beauty and seeking pleasure rather than searching for ways to alleviate pain or tragedy. Dorian is drawn in by this darkness and cancels his plans with Basil to hang out with Henry instead. Chapter 4. 1 month has passed, and the scene is in the home of Lord Henry. Dorian is discussing music with Lady Victoria, Lord Henry's wife. Dorian then tells them that he has fallen in love with an actress, Sybil Vane. Dorian discovered her in this cheap theater in the slums where he had been seeking out pleasure as instructed by Henry. However, her talent mesmerized him. Dorian claims that she is the greatest actress he has ever seen. He has spent some time with her, and she calls Dorian her Prince Charming. Dorian also remarks that Basil's portrait of him has been delivered and he's hung it up. When Dorian leaves, Henry contemplates how fascinating others' lives are. Later that evening, Henry receives a telegram that Dorian has become engaged to Sybil. Chapter 5. This chapter opens at the Vanes' home, where Sybil is ecstatic over her engagement. Her mother is slightly cautious, but her brother, James, is completely untrusting of Dorian's intentions. Sybil and James go for a walk, and readers learn that James is a sailor getting ready to work on a ship headed to Australia. Sybil suggests his life as a sailor, or the possibility of hunting for gold in Australia, are too dangerous, and that he should instead be a quiet sheep farmer. James warns Mrs. Vane to look out for Sybil's well-being, as he doubts that Dorian has honorable intentions toward his sister. Sybil says she loves Dorian with all of her heart, and James swears that if Dorian hurts her, he will kill Dorian. Chapter 6. Later in the evening, Henry and Basil discuss the engagement. Basil thinks it's a bad match because she's not from a wealthy family, but Henry suggests the only bad thing about life is as long as Dorian's growth and life experiences are not arrested, it doesn't matter. Dorian enters and can't hide how in love he is with Sybil. He tells Henry that because of her, he can see the superficiality of all of Henry's ideas. Henry defends his ideas about the pursuit of pleasure. They leave to watch Sybil perform. Chapter 7. Dorian does not stop talking about Sybil's virtues as they wait for the play to begin. Basil says he will support the match since Dorian is so clearly smitten. Unfortunately, when the play begins, Sybil's performance is horrible, and things get worse as the play goes on. Dorian is heartbroken, and both Henry and Basil leave. Backstage later, Sybil says that she doesn't care about her life as an actress because now that she knows true love, she no longer has the heart to play fake characters who do. She explains that when she didn't know love or happiness, her roles were everything to her. But now she cannot inhabit the fake spaces of the stage, and she will quit her acting career. Dorian is appalled, realizes his love was based solely on her talent and not on her as a person. And so he tells Sybil he never wants to see her again. Later, after roaming the streets of London, he returns home and notices that his portrait has changed. It seems like an unmistakable sneer has altered his smile. He covers it up, but in the morning, the change is still there. Spoiler alert, in the beginning of the next chapter, Dorian learns that Sybil killed herself in her dressing room that night after he left by swallowing poison.